Ladies and gentlemen, to introduce our next panel, please welcome back Urban League Vice President Tyrone Walker.
What's up, everybody? Now, I got a quick question for y'all. Have this been a good day or so? Good day? Good. Just one housekeeping item. We have been hearing really good feedback. We've been hearing some really constructive feedback about some things we could add. Be on the lookout for a survey that will come out from us tomorrow. We really want to hear your feedback, so be on the lookout for that. But like a good football season, when we were developing these panels, this panel right here was one that I circled as a must-see. We often call on creatives to bring a vision to life that the public can experience. However, Black artists have provided critical contributions to the advancement of justice, equity, and power for African Americans and other underserved communities. This panel discussion will explore how creatives have and will continue to be critical to the policy and advocacy work afoot in our communities. So let's get to introducing our panel and our moderator. First up, he hails from the great city of Shreveport, Louisiana. He's a dynamic healthcare professional and entrepreneur. He has been at the forefront of empowering Black business owners throughout Louisiana. And as the visionary founder of the Social Circle of Louisiana, he has cultivated a thriving network of entrepreneurs, creating opportunities for growth and collaboration across Shreveport, New Orleans, Baton Rouge. Help me welcome my good brother, Sylvester Marshall, Jr. Next up, help me bring to the stage New Orleans native, a former 20-year employee of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, where he ascended to Chief Infrastructure Manager. He returned to New Orleans, began a real estate development company, and opened what Oprah calls one of the best gyms, Baldwin and Company bookstore and coffee shop. And just a few days ago, our brother, he announced a new partnership with Credit Human to bring a new financial institution to our community where the old jeans po' boy used to be. Help me welcome DJ Johnson. Since retiring from ULL in 2015, Dean Emerita and Professor has worked to uncover the hidden histories of Iberia Parish and surrounding communities. In 2017, she founded a nonprofit, the Iberia African American Historical Society. Help me welcome, hailing all the way from Lafayette, Louisiana, Dr. Phoebe Hayes. Dr. Hayes get me to stop, let me tell you. This brother is taking the world by storm. He is one of our very best and strongest ambassadors. This New Orleans-based visual artist who, through exhibitions, public programs, and public artwork, is engaged in transnational dialogue about the intersection of art and resistance. He created Studio B in 2017, and in 2020, he founded Eternal Seeds, a nonprofit that uses art to educate, empower, and preserve New Orleans Black history and culture with the focus on our young people and emerging artists of color. Help me welcome Urban League of Louisiana 2023 honoree, Brandon B. Mike Odoms. And last but certainly not least, to the moderator of this fire panel, she is an accomplished program director, an accomplished program manager. She's an event producer, a cultural programmer, educator, author, and a community servant. She has presented 2 TED Talks, not just one, but 2 TED Talks. She's led numerous cultural district revitalization projects in the city. She is the leader and chief equity officer of the Ashe Culture Arts Center here in New Orleans. Help me welcome the great Asali Devon Ecclesiastes.
Hey, y'all. Looking at the world like, where do y'all doing? Y'all look good. Y'all look smart.
Yeah.
Y'all look bold. Y'all look like y'all ready to empower some artists up in here. Y'all ready for these people to empower us up in here? Are y'all feeling boundless? I feel boundless. All right, let's get it. Come on. How y'all doing? See, when you're an artist or arts administrator, you don't have to be all, prim and proper. We get to get loose. We get to get busy. And nobody looks at us any kind of way. So we're going to show y'all how to get some of this joy in your world.
Amen. Amen.
So let me start by saying thank you to the Urban League. I'm so grateful that you allowed me to pressure you into moderating this panel. In case y'all don't know, I was like, I want to be the moderator. And the reason is, when you do this work on a daily basis, as so many of you do, the people who inspire you to keep doing this work and to think of new ways to do this work is so important that we return the favor, right? And so that's kind of what I want to talk about. Our artists and our creatives in the state of Louisiana, we provide the industry, right? We make it possible for every other facet of life that happens here to happen in all of the amazing ways that it does. But we don't get supported equitably in that way. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how y'all could get the artists into some of your boardrooms, into some of your planning discussions, and to help advance your work in a way that you can't do without us. So give it up for this amazing panel. And let's get into this conversation. So I'm going to start with Dr. Hayes, we want to talk about wisdom and genius and the voices of our elders and ancestors and helping to guide the way. Dr. Hayes has helped us to do that with the work that she does. And so I want to ask you, from a historical perspective, how have artists and creatives helped to advance social change for African Americans throughout the country through advocacy?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do want to thank the Urban League for inviting me to participate in this wonderful event. It's my first, and it will not be my last, I pray. And it's a joy to have met so many people who are involved in doing very important work. I like the fact that you've used the word creatives, because I have always loved artists. I've always wanted to be an artist. I've taken art lessons, right? And the best I can do is buy art. But I like the idea of creatives, because creatives means that someone like me, who's still trying to learn how to mix those paints up, I can take the trainings that I have acquired over the years, the experiences that I've had over the years in my own field, which is speech pathology, believe it or not, communication sciences and disorders. That's what all my degrees are in. But I was trained as a researcher, a writer, a thinker, even a debater. And when I retired from the university, I understood that I could use those same skills to make my community better. Because after all, I'd spent a lifetime in that community. And I knew what some of the problems were, what many of the problems were. I knew what the histories were that were being covered up. And then I began to find that there were histories I had never known about. And I just felt that it was so unfair. So as a creative, because I am that, I'm interdisciplinary, I can take that training that I've acquired over the years, and I can research my people's history that until now was not even known. No one even knew that we had a family like the Wakefields of Iberia Parish, whose father had been our first, and we didn't even know we had a black state senator. We didn't know that the first woman to actually get a medical degree from a Louisiana institution came from New Iberia, Louisiana. And she established the first, despite the fact that a lot of people don't know this, she established the first medical practice in the state of Louisiana by a black woman.
Wow.
And that was Dr. Emma Wakefield. And we were able to document all of that. So how do creatives, how do we make change in our communities? How can we advocate? Just take the experiences that we have. Just take the perceptions and the perspectives that we have and identify those problems in those communities and apply what you know to help solve those problems. And I better shut up because I begin to feel as if, sometimes I get a little bit excited and because this is exciting work. And even though I wasn't trained as a historian academically, I am. I have such a passion, not just for history, but for making the community I come from more enlightened. I'm so sick and tired of people looking down in certain neighborhoods in my community as though those are those neighborhoods where people just don't care.
Yeah.
The schools are terrible. Well, let's talk about the historical decisions that were made a long time ago that led us exactly to where we are today.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden there's silence, but we don't accept the silence. And one more thing I want to say.
Keep going.
When we talk about art has a lot to say about the conditions of our communities. One of the things I talked to the mayor and certain civic groups and community leaders about is we're invisible. We're invisible in New Iberia, just like in all these other little former Jim Crow communities, right? Even the art, the murals in town. We have an alligator that's featured, and we have Cajuns, and we have, pirogues. But when it comes to black people just incidentally being depicted on those murals around town, we're absent. We're just like our history is absent, from the telling of New Iberia, Louisiana. Not anymore. But people need to be enlightened because the more we go through these day-to-day journeys in our little communities, we're blind to all those things that are undone and to all those things that portray lies about who we are as a community. And these are good people. They don't mean any harm. But the harm comes in too, where we as black people accept these.
Yes.
These narratives, these lack of representation or symbols that feature us, we accept them as normal. So our goal is to wake up the community and to teach people and to help people understand that we were here too. And as a matter of fact, blacks were in Iberia before the Cajuns.
That's right.
And the Spaniards. So,
Yes.
but anyway. That's
Thank
another
you.
talk.
So real quick, does anybody in this room know me? Raise your hand if you know me. So y'all know I talk long. So who's the timekeeper? Okay, so just, and if you gotta, so, because I will sit here and listen to all y'all all day, but I know we are limited.
You gotta
but
tell me to shut up.
No, you don't have to shut up. I'm taking your cue to warn myself because I will come sit right here at your feet and just, yes. So thank you so much for getting us started on the absolute right note. And so to the point of how we are diminished, right, and how we are ignored. We're not ignored when it comes to making money, right? The full focus is on us. And there are lots of policies, lots of practices that are instituted in our state to extract as much as possible, right? From, we still living under the laws of the 1700s, in case y'all don't know. We still live under laws that were created when we were enslaved, right? So all of that has to change, right? That's why the Urban League is here to help us get all of that changed. But in the meantime, I want to go to DJ because I'm so inspired by some of your recent work. For those who don't know, we have a 25 to 30-year difference in life expectancy between Black New Orleanians and white New Orleanians. And I just have the data on New Orleans. I'm sure across the state it's similar, if not more exacerbated, right? And one of the things that we learned as a result of that, we have a program where we hire artists because they don't trust the doctors, we don't trust the scientists, right? So we hire artists to carry messages around health and to give access. One of the things that the artists learned in their work with the community is that we experience something called financial trauma. When we gotta go spend money, when my mama used to have to spend money at the grocery store, she had a certain look. You know what I mean? It's like a little bite right here, you know, and you know, as a child, you don't know, you just know it's different from how she usually is, right? And so there's something that happens to Black folks, right, around our transactions with money and how we relate to moneyed situations. And so the idea of your financial center is exciting, and I feel like it can address financial trauma. What inspired you to take your work from literature and, I mean, you know, literature opens up all of the spaces, but to go from literature to finance? Talk to me about that. And tell us about the center.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you all. So thank you for that question. I really do appreciate it. What inspired it is that when you look at some of the most daunting challenges in the Black community, the most daunting challenge is around money, economic inequality. So when I moved back to New Orleans, I'm looking and I'm assessing, like, what are the major challenges in New Orleans? I'm looking at climate change, I'm looking at healthcare, I'm looking at inequality in terms of the schools and education, and I'm looking at those things and gun violence and crime prevention. I say, okay, what are the things that I can do to help mitigate these things? And I'm an avid reader, so naturally I picked literacy. And Ball with a Company, we're one of those organizations, so we plan on using literacy to change the world. So we will impact the world and solve some of the world's greatest issues. Those are poverty. Illiteracy increases poverty rates. Mass incarceration. Illiteracy increases your likelihood of going to jail. Right now in New Orleans, fourth graders, 84% of fourth graders read below grade level. The problem with that is 76% of that 84% will end up in jail or incarcerated at some point in their lifetime. So then the next is jobs, a thriving economy. To your question in terms of the financial trauma, James Baldwin says, anyone that has been impoverished understands how expensive it is.
That's right.
It's the trauma. That's what he's referring to. It's that anguish when you go to that store and you're worried about your kid picking up something. You know, a lot of times the Black parents, they ain't telling you don't touch nothing because they don't want to buy it. They telling you because they don't touch nothing because I can't afford to replace it.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's that trauma. And for me, addressing the reading illiteracy rates, because on a global scale, illiteracy costs this global economy $1.5 trillion annually.
Wow.
That's what illiteracy, according to the World Literacy Foundation, that's what illiteracy costs the global economy. So I say, how can I help this community? So I started with reading and increasing individuals' ability to raise their literacy scores. But now it's time to go to the next phase. And the next phase is teaching individuals how to manage money, how to not just become a consumer. Because right now, we make a lot of money in the Black communities, but we also spend a lot of money. We're the #1 consumers in this country, but we have the lowest rates of savings or wealth. For instance, just in New Orleans, the poverty rate for Blacks in New Orleans right now is 30%. Poverty rate for Hispanics is 20%. Poverty rate for whites is 11%. So 50% of the poverty in New Orleans is made up of Blacks and Latinos.
By design.
By design. You know, these are government-sponsored initiatives. So it's like, how do we break the cycle? Well, we have to break the cycle by developing partnerships with institutions. There's a lot of these rappers and a lot of social entertainers are saying, buy back the blocks. And it sounds cute, but like, what are we going to do? How do we get the capital? Because, I can be an entertainer, I can be an entrepreneur. They're pushing entertainment, they're pushing entrepreneur, and I'm all for it. I'm all for entrepreneurship. I'm all for entertaining. I'm all for getting money. But what do we do with that capital? And I gotta be honest with you, it takes more than just cash to purchase a block. When you go to a bank, you gotta have credit. You gotta have collateral. You gotta have a banking history. So for me, the Jeans building, I purchased it in August of 2020.
Let me just stop you right there. Listen, those roast beef po' boys at 3 a.m.
Just drip down. Just drip down. I know.
With a little pickle, you know what I'm sharing, and a little gravy.
I know. On the little paper plates.
Could I get one of those with my little financial plan? You know, the art, the science. I'm only kidding.
No, I got you. So yeah, so I purchased the building in August 2020. It sat empty until recently, so I just released the plans until August of 2023. So I was getting offers on that building 3 times a week.
Yeah, wow.
People were flooding me with offers. People were just like, why are you turning down this good money? You know, people want to put restaurants, people want to put all the kind of businesses, a flower shop. I had all kind of offers. Most of them were for restaurants. You know, people were just like, why do you keep turning down money? This building is just sitting empty. And I said, because it's a bigger vision at play.
Yeah.
I need a partner. I don't just need a tenant. It's not about the money, it's about the people. I need someone that is going to come back. Thank you. You know, I said, I need someone that is going to come back and enrich this community, not just take from the community. There's a lot of organizations that just come in and take from the community.
Sure.
I say, I came back to New Orleans to give to this community.
Yeah, and you've been doing that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So it sat empty, and it just was really serendipitous how the relationship between the president and the CEO of Credit Human and I came along. He actually just walked into Baldwin Company one day for something completely unrelated, and he was looking at books, and I happened to be in there, and I was like, hey man, what book are you reading? And we engaged in a conversation about books, and he asked me a little bit more personal questions. I asked him some personal questions. I was like, man, you know what? We should talk. I think our missions align here.
Yeah.
You know, just very serendipitous. I had been looking for the right partner. He's been looking for the right partner.
Yeah.
I was telling someone earlier, this has been in the works for almost a year. He and I have been going back and forth on this partnership and this relationship and how we are going to open up access to capital to Black and brown people in this community, because I said, I don't need just another tenant. I need someone that is going to give back to this Black community.
You're giving me the chills. You know why? Because, so a lot of people in this room said they knew me. I know y'all too. How many of y'all are going to support this? That's not enough hands. How many of you all have need of this project? How many of you all have people? How many of you all have projects? How many of you all have dreams that need the kind of access and also the kind of healing, the kind of financial? When we talk about mental health, we don't even talk about the money part. How many of us need this financial healing? I need a healing. Right? Yeah. So I want everybody in this room to remember what you're hearing right now and to make sure that you are there. Even if, now first of all, I know all of y'all done got some books and coffee and pastries from Baldwin. But if you hadn't, go do that. But for sure, go and make sure that we put in as much as you're putting in.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Sure.
So if one of the things that we're going to do is not just teaching financial literacy. We're going to create access to capital for individuals that have entrepreneurial endeavors, need personal unsecured loans, whether it be for your kid going to college, whether that be for car loans, things of that sort. We're also going to take our youth members, enroll them, give them bank accounts. So now they're 9, 10, 11 years old. They're establishing bank accounts.
I mean, y'all not kids no more, but where my young people at? Where my Ashe young people at? Yeah. Y'all heard that? How many coming to get bank accounts? How many about to buy houses and cars and college education? Okay. All right.
Thank you. So that's what heals that financial burden that creates such a stress. Finances, it breaks up happy homes. It's the #1 cause of divorce. It's not infidelity. People may think it's infidelity. No, it's financial. So it's the #1 stress factor. I mean, that's what keeps people up at night.
Yeah, because you can't be cheating if you don't got enough money.
There you go.
We can't have both of them now.
Exactly. So that's how you cure it. That's how you cure it, you know? That's how you create a happy home right there. You know?
That's it.
Yeah.
So I mean, but yeah, so that's the method on how this financial center will help heal the financial traumas or the traumas within the Black community. Is now we can live in a more economic empowered environment, and that opens up opportunity for us.
Ashe, thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
Look, the people who know me also know whenever we have a conversation, I got 4 or 5 ideas. So I'll be calling you. I got some things.
I got you.
All right, Sylvester. Hey,
Hey,
how you doing?
I'm good.
Ah! He be keeping that 318 lit, I heard. Lit from north to the south, you know what I'm saying?
A little something.
Yes, a little something, something. So, you are one of the most sought after event production companies in North Louisiana because you seem to know how to create experiences that bring people together. Few know, but you have also had your hand in local politics, local and state politics. And many of your clients are organizations looking to change policies and conditions for our people. Why do you like working with change makers? And how do you help them approach and improve their work? How do you help make organizations as lit as you are? That's the real question.
First, I want to thank Urban League for Tyrone for the invitation of looking upwards to Shreveport, even though I've been living in New Orleans for the past 6 years, but still, just being statewide, but also for Urban League to expanding outside of New Orleans, but also expanding and turning it to the Urban League of Louisiana. So just basically giving a vision and a backing to organizations like myself and political organizations throughout the state, having that backing when you walk into the room knowing Urban League is behind you, it definitely changes the conversation.
That's right.
One reason I wanted to work with organizations is because, by day in healthcare, my thing is to lobby for special needs, families and kids, and people just in need. So it was like, okay, how can I if I'm giving a voice on this side, how can I give a voice to my community as well and do it in an innovative, fun kind of way? One of the staples in the Black community, throughout history has been the Black church. Growing up, AME, African Methodist, preacher's kid, and all of that, I wasn't the bad one.
Now we know why he lived.
I wasn't the bad one. I wasn't the one. I was a good kid.
Okay.
Now my sisters now.
Yeah, it's the sisters.
But it was always like, okay, throughout history, the Black church was where we met. It was where we shared ideas. The pastors were the one who pushed the message out to the community because, just looking back through history, it's like, well, why was it, sometimes we question that a lot. Like, why was it the pastors that was pushing the issue? Well, if I was Mr. So-and-so and I worked, like for instance, my grandfather cleaned the bank. If he went out and he was the one, he would have been fired immediately or worse. So, the church was always the backbone of where we cultivated ideas, where we organized, where, as well as the traditional organizations like the NAACP, et cetera. But throughout time, the landscape of the church has changed. We've kind of gotten away from, we like church quick and fast.
Before the football game.
And a lot of times the churches that just, quite frankly, the churches that we've started to attend, even especially my age group millennials, are not even in the community, and they're not even ran by us. So how can we organize and push our message through the church and through the communities? And
What's the message?
the message of just things we need, voting, what's needed in our community, advocacy for, even who are we gonna back in this political race? Who are we gonna put up to run? Things like that. So, we're just coming in and out of church like a microwave. We're not there organizing. We're not there really talking about what's actually going on in the day-to-day. Church is really, in most cases, have turned to just a networking quick session after church where we're gonna eat it and we go home. So with that, we never reorganized into where is our meeting place and how do we, you know, sometimes when you say, hey, y'all, we need to get together and talk about these issues, everybody kind of groans and moans and, you know, it's uncomfortable, or still we get there and we're wondering how long am I going to be here before I can leave and go do something else. So one thing we try to do is partner with these organizations and say, look, hey, we're going to get that message across, but we're going to do it in a fun way, or we're going to do it in a creative way, or we're going to put a twist to it that's going to engage our community, is going to engage business owners. For instance, there was a few policies and a few things on the ballot a few years ago. We decided to do a huge brunch that bring out about 1,500 people. We got tons of people registered to vote.
Nice.
And we had a good time doing it. So it's just finding those creative ways that we can partner with these organizations throughout the state, as well as create these events and things ourselves that while you're there, you're gonna learn something, you're gonna get something, you're gonna have a good time too. But, and that's not all, everything is not a good time, but you know, how can we engage in these creative ways to really get down and meet people where they are? Because sometimes, a lot of times, people feel like, oh, I can't go in those rooms. I can't walk in those spaces. I feel intimidated. But sometimes you have to still do the grassroots, knocking on doors, meeting people like we talked about earlier, the national night outs, where you do the block parties on the streets, and things like that. Like, how do you really engage with your neighbor?
Especially when you're the one I'm the Captain Buzzkill at all the parties. Like, I want to talk about the voter stuff and all of the issues, but you figure out how to make that fun.
Right, we're gonna get you in.
Yeah.
We're gonna get you in, we're gonna give you what you need. We're gonna give it to you in a fun way. We're gonna also empower you and let people know. A lot of times, people don't do things because they never learn the why. You know, sometimes we tell people why you should vote. Well, you need to vote, you need to vote, you need to vote. Well, you know, we don't feel like a lot of times how this impacting my day-to-day.
That's right.
Now, when you tell people, no, that's why.
That's
That's how that impacted your day-to-day.
That's right.
And so when you get down on that level and you let people know the reasons of why and how your voice can be heard and impact your community in the day-to-day, sometimes it will even empower new leaders to come forward, because they never knew that, hey, you know, that's an idea I had. And I have organizations behind me that will get behind me, like the Urban League and things like that, that will, now we've created new leaders, new messages, and things like that.
So creating new leaders, oh my God. Do we not need that right now so badly?
So lately the narrative I've been hearing is, why we always need a leader? You know, that's why does the black community always feel like we need a leader or leaders, for instance? And it's not so much as though we need leaders per se, but we need people to go forward and push the message.
We need messengers.
We need messengers.
Be mine.
we need messengers because all the time everybody doesn't have everything that they need.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes he has a piece of this, I have a piece of that, I have a piece of that, and then sometimes we just need the messenger that's gonna walk up to the microphone and captivate the room.
Kill a noise.
And kill the noise. You know, sometimes I think a lot of times we end up with more chiefs than we have Indians.
Yeah.
Well, Native Americans, I'm sorry. We have Native Americans, and so with that, sometimes the message gets lost because no one wants to do the work. They want to be seen more than actually getting the work done.
I shaded that. And the Chiefs is pretty, right? We get it.
We get it.
We all love the Chiefs, but we also know who in the kitchen sewing them beads and doing the dang on thing, right? It's the artist, right? And it's so much art that lives in all of us. Like, we have that blessing, we have that blessing, you know, as New Orleanians, as Louisianans, really, right? To be infused with the spirit of art and of culture that, and I say this confidently as someone who's been blessed to travel all over the world, that is really unmatched, you know. And so with that, I'm gonna turn to be Mike a little bit. Yeah, because, so I know you a little bit. I trust my son with you. I send him to you to learn how to be an artist. How many people in here, your children go to be like, yay, wow. You know? I trust my children with you, and I would also trust you in any boardroom, any policy room, any of those things, right? Because I can see the analysis inside of your artwork. And the reason I want to get personal with you is because my question for you is about the underlying kind of impetus, right, for the art. Because there are people who make art for art's sake, right, because it's pretty. We ain't got time for that. We are under some existential threats, right? One of them being our electoral politics. I had a conversation with a friend yesterday who told me that Urban League was a radical organization.
Okay.
Who in here think Urban League is a radical organization? You got to be the KKK to think Urban League is a radical organization. And that is being pushed by someone who is running to be our governor. And in my mind, he the KKK. I'm an artist, so I can say it. Don't take that as the official stance of anyone in this room. But Jeff Landry has,
I thought it was.
that's just a Solly talking. Jeff Landry has policies and practices that are aligned with white supremacy, that are aligned with the KKK and all of these kinds of things. And when we were in high school and David Duke was running, we came out full force. We were like, we're not having the Klan be our governor. Well, we about to have the Klan be our governor if we don't do something different, right? So as an artist, what can we do?
Oh, you give me that question.
That.
Okay. Okay. I think there's a lot of thoughts, right? I was always taught that if you can't improve the silence, you should be quiet.
True. Now
And
that's
so
saying
I feel as artists, we're communicators, and we do it in dynamic ways. We do it in ways that are inviting, that are empathetic. And with that comes responsibility. You said art for art's sake. I had elders I'm grateful for that instilled in me that art was survival technology. It was coded in us as a means of survival. It's
That's
how
right.
it was done, it's how we would continue to do it as means to remind ourselves of our value as well as our place in the midst of spaces that tell us that we don't belong, right? It's the art that reassures us. But also on the other side of it, from the audience perspective, I keenly understand that whatever bubbles we project around us to protect us from the unknown, from what we're afraid of, typically what we let pierce the bubble first is the art. It's the cinema, it's the food, it's the poetry,
Yes.
it's the music. These are the things we always allow in first. And so I understand with that also brings responsibility, that my art can go places that people might not be ready for me to walk in yet. And I remember hearing somebody say, when I walk in the room, my race walks with me. And so all these thoughts around like the responsibility that comes with just what it means to exist and all those things. And so in response to you, I would say the key is to always be truthful. The key is to always, as Paul Robin say, artists are the gatekeepers of truth. And what does that mean? To reflect the voices of those who aren't in the room with you as well. But it's also a challenge because I think there is, like, to echo some of the things I heard on the panel, like there is a thought around I feel like I try to intentionally spend as much time as possible to demystify what it means to be an artist. That we're not like the ones on high that get the supreme messages and we come down and we dismantle, distribute it to the people.
But your murals look like that, though.
I appreciate that. We all striving to do the best we can with what we got. And recently, the way I see it, the role of an artist is to, at least the way I'm thinking through it right now, is that the role of the artist is to imagine alternatives to the present.
Yeah.
When you define an artist by that, then you realize that there's many of us in this room that are artists.
Yes.
We're actively engaging in the process of defining or imagining alternatives to the present.
Yes.
And so that focuses us to think about our imagination, right? And how so much of our life we spend, and why I love working with youth. I can pass on to them, as John Scott would say, but also I learn so much from them because their imagination is so unhinged and it's so broad and vast as the scope of a dream that as we get older, we sort of like get tethered to reality and things become less possible because we understand the obstacles or the context or the circumstances. When you talk to a child and they're like, that's whack. And then to their mind, it is whack. Like, it's like, why is this a rule? Like, why is this the reality? Like, I don't believe that, so it's not true.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's about like allowing or giving agency to people to say, just dig into your imagination. Like, what, and I know it's like, that's, you know, real poetic and theoretical in a lot of ways, but it's what fuels, it has to fuel the work we do. Because if not, then we become rudderless and we become like cynical and, you know, and I've seen too many beautiful elders become that because the imagination, they lose that link to their imagination and it's just the reality that they see. So, to go back to your question, I think ultimately the role of the artist is to remind people of their imagination, to remind people that it's our duty to imagine alternatives to the present, to show them how beautiful it can be, whether it's through an instrument or whether it's through words. It's like we use words all the time, but when you hear a poet use words, you're like, wait a minute, you can do it like that? You know what I mean? Or people come up to me all the time like, I can't draw a stick figure, I can't draw a straight line. I'm like, that's not what it means to be an artist. But yes, I can understand how you see me do it and you're like, oh, you're doing it different. But so I think it is about reminding people of what's possible, of showing them that their imagination is what's needed, radical imagination.
Yes.
As Robin D.G. Kelly talks about, the radical imagination is what's needed to create alternatives to the present. And that's all I got to say.
I share. Well, that's saying a lot.
Thank you.
Let me do a time check-in. How much? I got 10 minutes? Y'all heard that? All right. So I have one question that I want to bring down the aisle to play off your question, right? I do believe, and it is my ministry, besides reading. Reading is my ministry, because people don't even want to read the emails. They didn't even send you a question. Like, maybe I said that in the email. But anyway, besides reading, I'm really on a mission to infuse the work of art and artists inside of every policy conversation, inside of every legislative conversation, inside of everything that we do to build projects and to dream a new world. Like, literally, we in Louisiana live under laws that were created in 1712, 13, whenever they started doing that stuff, right? Those laws are still on the books. Those laws are the architecture by which we live our lives, whether we know it or not, to your point, right? So that's a lot of work. And most people can't even imagine themselves out of that frame. But I know we are the ones who can, and not only that, we are the ones who will, right? I was on a panel one time. Madeleine Albright said to me after the panel, she was like sitting right there, and I was the only black person and the only woman on the panel and the only short person. It was like all of y'all was tall white men, and they was just trying to talk over me, and I'm from the Seven Boys. At the end of the day, I was like, look, I know that time said it's gone, but y'all didn't talk through y'all time, so now I'm about to take the end of this panel, and we about to have this conversation. And so I impressed Madeleine Albright with my little bodaciousness, and she came up to me afterwards and she said, you know, as Secretary of State, she said, I always brought people to New Orleans first. I always brought foreign visitors from other countries to New Orleans before I took them to the rest of the country. She said, because I believe that New Orleans is the place that can achieve equity in our country. She said, New Orleans represents the best of who America is and the worst of who America is. And I think it is the one place that can achieve equity first. And if you do it in New Orleans, the rest of the country will follow. And I have taken that to heart. You know, in a way, I don't take much words from politicians to heart, right? And so with that in mind, as we close out, y'all sure y'all want to close out? I got another hour in me. What y'all I know y'all got a schedule. All right. But next time, you know, let's talk for a little longer. But like, close us out with your most radical dream for a policy change where artists can make a difference right here, right now in our state? And we just gonna go down the line.
I think for me, the number one thing is unification.
Okay.
New Orleans, y'all gotta stop calling Shreveport East Texas.
How dare we?
I know I got a country twang when I talk, and I'm not gonna try to cover it up and be Mr. Marshall. I'm gonna give it to y'all, the country twang.
Yeah.
But we have to all get on the same page. You know, whether it's North Louisiana, Central, Lake Charles, you know, we had the opportunity to put together the Bayou Classic in Shreveport when it couldn't be in New Orleans that year because of the Superdome under construction. And most people had never even traveled outside. Well, they said, oh, I drove through one time going to Dallas. Or they got there and they were looking around like, y'all have red lights? I'm like, yes, we have black leaders, you know,
Well, we
black
could do
organizations.
something about that, though.
Black leaders, black organizations, you know,
Yeah.
black business owners, you know. So I think that's a goal, has been a goal for me, is to unify the North and the South, Louisiana, Central Louisiana, you know, because I was born in Morial, grew up in Shreveport, went to school in Natchitoches and Hammond, and got friends in Lake Charles and live in New Orleans. So I'm just a Louisiana boy at heart, or whatever, all through and through the state. So, but I just see the disconnect.
Yeah.
And when you speak to other states, I just see more unity amongst the black people as far as where they're from. It's okay to be proud of where you're from, or whatever, your neighborhood, your community, your city, your state, or whatever, but you have to put an emphasis and effort behind it, and you have to be willing to connect and broaden your brand, broaden yourself, and broaden your message. Because if you're just speaking your message in New Orleans, we may never hear it.
That's right. That's
You
right.
know, so right, and I mean, through social media, it has impacted that, but I literally hear people say, oh, they're not going to be receptive, they're not going to hear me in New Orleans. Or New Orleans people say I don't have to talk to people in North Louisiana, for what? I'm bigger than that.
Oh, no. Y'all hear that, young people? Where y'all at? Y'all going to Shreveport? Y'all gonna go to Shreveport? Who said no? Not nobody I pay. They come to Shreveport.
But you know, and it's not even just kind of wrap up. That's not even just, you know, just Louisiana as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to learn how to connect and work with each other
Around the globe.
around the globe.
And if we can't work with each other inside this state, how are we going to connect with our people in all of the other places?
Right, you can't skip the process.
That's
Sometimes
right.
we want to go from our hometown to the White House to national to global. No,
Yeah.
be the mayor of your city, be the mayor of your town.
What can artists do about that, though, real quick, so they don't fuss at me?
I think what artists have to do is partner with each other, work with each other. Excuse me, I'm over here choking. Work with each other, collaborate, get together. Like, I love what he was saying was take money out of it. So many times we don't want to collaborate because we worry about what I'm gonna make, you know, and things like that. Take all that and get back on mission.
Yeah.
Get back on purpose.
Ashe, thank you so much. We going to Shreveport. DJ?
That's a tough question, I gotta be honest with you. But I love, because it spurs your imagination at work, that type of question. One of the things that I think about, it's kind of like our mission. Like my mission and our overall mission with everyone that supports Baldwin & Company is to create a literary renaissance and change the spectrum of education in the city and change the landscape of literacy in the country. I really think, like you said, New Orleans is that perfect laboratory of study. To whereas if you can solve climate change in New Orleans, you can solve it around the world. If you can solve economic equality in New Orleans, you can solve it. You can solve race relations. If you can solve healthcare in New Orleans, and you can take that recipe and you can use it to solve the problems all across the world. So I do agree with you in that it being the perfect laboratory of study. But one thing I kind of would like to encourage, I think too often individuals put artists into like a different category. And it kind of was going to what Mike was saying. like I would love to encourage everyone in this audience is an artist. Like James Baldwin said, artists are here to disturb the peace.
Oh, that's good.
That's a fact.
Disturb the status quo.
Yeah,
Because the status quo hasn't been working for us.
That's right.
So we need disruptors.
that's right.
So be an artist, be a disruptor. You know, what I would love for New Orleanians to do is stop being a product of your circumstances and become an agent of change. So if I'm looking for radical change in an area, you know where I want to start with? I want to start with education. Because like Nelson Mandela said, the most powerful weapon to change the world, it's not a gun, it's not a knife, it's not a bomb, it's education.
That's right.
New Orleans
That's
got one of
right.
the most deplorable and unique educational systems in this country. We're the only city that is a 100% charter. Now, I'm not necessarily saying I'm for or against it, but I'm just saying that when 84% of your fourth graders aren't reading that grade level, shit,
Come
something
on.
needs to change.
Yeah,
It needs to change.
yeah.
So when we're talking about where we're going to start with radical change, start with education.
That's right. That's why we can get a Trump. You know what I'm saying? Because people can't think critically.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so on purpose and on mission, stop being a product of your circumstances and be an agent of change. The wisdom on the panel, what is our next step? Come on, doctor.
I don't know who she's talking to. But I enjoy being here so much and listening to, you know, my co-panelists and our wonderful moderator. You guys just kind of stimulate all the synapses in the brain, thinking and what have you. And that's really what creatives do. We take from our surroundings and ideas and we figure out how we can apply them, right? So, but I think your question, initial question, as I interpreted it, had to do with, you know, what's basically the next step? What's my focus? What do I have so many. But I'll choose one or two. I believe strongly in unification and education. That's the foundation of what I do, unifying our community. But the way it has to be done is through education. I sat in a wonderful panel this morning with Kathy Hamrick and I'm going to forget the other panelists. But it was, Dr. Joy. Thank you. How could I forget Joy?
That's a good panel there.
But one of the things that I wanted to say is that the problem that we have when it comes to race relationships, when it comes to ignorance regarding our history in this state, is the educational system. Children don't feel pride in our history as Black people because they've never been taught it. They've never, ever been taught properly. They don't know we had Black mayors and Black senators. They may know we had a Black governor. They may know that. But they don't know anything else about our people, especially those people who came straight out of slavery and took on positions of leadership. And at great detriment to themselves, they were able to still rise and succeed until racism raised its head and shut them down. So one of the things that I want to do moving forward, we have 64 parishes in this wonderful state. And I told you about Iberia Parish and the fact that we have all this history that was hidden. I promise you the other 63 parishes have the same situation. They have histories that are hidden. They have children, adults growing up and living in those communities who know nothing. And you may be related to some of those people, and that's kind of the thing that gets me. Our children are related to some of these wonderful Black doctors, Black politicians, philanthropists, because we had so many people who came out of slavery, worked hard, and got land, and they donated it to their communities for Black churches and Black schools, and we don't know anything about them. And these are people who are kids, but the kids know, and I'm going to say this, and I hope you all understand, I have a problem with people telling me who my heroes are. The children know, and again, with all respect to Dr. King, Sojourner Truth, Rosa Parks, they know who all those great heroes, those great national figures are. But they don't know, for example, in New Iberia, Dr. C.J. Vitow, right? Or Dr. Emma Wakefield, or Adolph Wakefield, who was our Black clerk of court. I didn't know that. And on and on and on, because it was hidden. We don't even have pictures of some of those people anymore. So my goal is to not only educate my own community, but to encourage and to stimulate other communities like ours which are all those 63 other parishes, because none of them escaped, to encourage them to found their own historical societies, to teach their people about who they are.
Ashe, thank you. And what I'm also hearing here before I move on to be Mike, we need to start historical societies, but we also need to change legislation.
Absolutely.
So that our education is taught from our perspective, that it is, you know, because our education, our textbooks, all of that stuff comes from Texas, right? So that has to change. We know how they're intentionally miseducating their folks and how they're using their influence to do the same throughout our region. So how do we stand up for what we want our folks to know, for what our elders and ancestors deserve to be taught about them, that will lead to our unification, that will lead to our edification? And B. Mike, you're gonna end us with like the whole artist
okay. All the things.
from on high
message
that's gonna change the world right now.
Oh, damn. Okay, go. No, I think that's a great question. I think that the framework of that question is so important, like the way you attached it to. We do this, actually we're doing the workshop tomorrow with some youth here at the conference, Radical Freedom Dream, and getting them to sort of think through these large questions, but when you just give yourself, it's like working out, like you give yourself the agency to try. Like, let me just try to imagine something. Because we get so locked into the present that we lose the ability to just, I wonder, you know, like being curious. Anyway, what was the question?
But see, that's the great thing about an artist. Sometimes you get lost in the question and come up with buku other answers.
Yeah, you know,
right?
I think ultimately it's like the thought. If anybody worked with clay or with just, you know, creating with your hands with clay, the goal I think is to just remain workable and malleable. You know, if clay sits for too long, it gets hard, and typically that's the finished result, right? You create something, you glaze it, and then you make it perfect. But I think the goal with the beauty of your curiosity is that you're able to like stay malleable, stay workable. You're able to still be curious enough to wonder and say. And I meet so many people that life just made them hard. It's like I can't tell you anything. I can't introduce you to anything because you created a full-blown conclusion about everything. And it's like, and those typically aren't the best people to be around. But I think that ultimately, I appreciate the way DJ thinks because I think that way as well. I always think about things through quotes and like referencing people's words and mood boards of sorts and images, sight, sounds. And so there's a quote that I'm gonna introduce from a gangster rapper named Benny the Butcher. And he said, I wanted to preface it that way purposely, but he said, what's more important, a flower or the soil that grew it? And I think, if I think about what's needed most for this space, I think we found ways, and it's challenging sometimes, we found ways to celebrate the flowers.
Yes.
Right? To think about
And
all
to
the amazing
commodify
things.
the flowers.
Commodify, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation in terms of what happens when you celebrate the flowers only. But we found a way to showcase, we can pinpoint the flowers of this space. And we have beautiful flowers. That's why people love New Orleans, because we have so many amazing, beautiful flowers. And if you speak to any of the flowers, you realize how challenging it is to become a flower in this space.
Come
right?
on.
It's very difficult.
They're very hard.
But there are tons of flowers despite that,
Despite
which is
that.
another thing to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Despite all the challenges, there's still so many beautiful flowers here. But more important than the flowers is the soil that grew it, right? And so I think if I'm thinking about what's needed is all the general idea of what it means to invest in the soil. Because if we invested in the soil, then we wouldn't need to change neighborhoods. We wouldn't need to think about how you change the name of this place and move people into that place. It's like, no, we understand why this is valuable and beautiful. We invest in our institutions, invest in Black businesses, invest in the education. Like, that's the soil.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's that broad scope of saying, more important than the flower is the soil that grew it, and how do we invest in that soil?
Ashe. That was a beautiful metaphor to end with. So thank you so much. Thank you to each and every one of you for being a fertilizer, for being sunshine, for being water, for being all of the things that helps the soil right, to become rich enough, to become whole enough, to grow the flowers that we need. And to your point, our next conversation is going to be on the commodification of all
Right.
that we do and
can't
how
pick
we
them flowers.
grab that back and pull that back into the soil. How do we reinvest? How do you, become the nitrous that makes the soil breathe? How do we become irrigation systems? I see some irrigation systems out here. I see some agriculturalists and people who know husbandry and all of these things out here, right? And we need to do all of that. Hello, don't get a poet to talking now. I be done made a poem before I got off the stage. But I don't need to, because the poetry is living and is right here. And thank you to the Urban League and to all of you for giving us the opportunity to share our art with you.
Thank you.